Hey guys, I'm Charlie, and I thought I would help you become green thumbs this week because I am a green thumb. I have a lot of plants in my house, but I've had one that I've been struggling with a lot, and that is my orchid. So I'm going to teach you all about orchids and all the things that I just learned about because mine was definitely on its last legs. So orchids are plants that typically actually grow on trees in the wild. They're air livers. I'm sure there's a better word for that. I can't think of it. But they basically live on the sides of trees and they don't live in soil. So they're probably one of the hardest plants to grow. They bloom once a year if you take care of them. And if you don't take care of them, they're like, fuck you, we're not gonna bloom. Which is really frustrating because you often don't know that they're unhappy until the year comes around and you don't have a flower. Mine, I know, is not going to bloom this year. It's super sad. So I want to talk you through a repotting. The reason why we're repotting mine is because I noticed it wasn't attempting to bloom, and also I hadn't repotted it. I did some Googling and I found out that at the end of every flower season, you're actually supposed to repot your orchid. So I'm going to teach you all the things that I've learned. My little guy, I've been sitting in a bowl because you soak the roots pretty intensely before you go to repot them into their pot. There's a lot going on with my plants, so I'm going to show you guys what I've learned. So this little white patch that you can see on this leaf, that's actually a sunburn. So when I first got this orchid, I didn't know that orchids burnt in the sun. They actually prefer a lot of shade, but bright indirect light. So not a super dark room, otherwise it's not going to thrive. And so at some point, this plant, while it was sitting on my bench here, the sunlight hit that leaf and burnt it, which is really frustrating. So I'm just leaving this alone to let it heal, but you'll also see where it's bubbled around it. So this leaf is kind of very sad. This is how the leaf should look. It should be really smooth with no bubbles. So I'm letting that heal. The other thing you'll notice is this little part is where I used to have flowers. So when I first had this and my orchids dropped their flowers and I knew it was time for it to start again, I knew I had to cut the flowers off, but I felt like I needed to leave a lot of stem. So initially I kept the stem quite long, and then nothing seemed to be happening there for regrowth. So I did some Googling and I found out that what you were actually supposed to do is take the last node. This is called a node, where you see like a new little bit of stick sprouting, I guess. And then you're supposed to cut it just above that, and then it'll reflower outside of that. So I fucked up on a few fronts, but that's totally fine. The next thing that I researched, I did a lot wrong, guys. This is basically a tutorial on what not to do with orchids. I went to look at how I repot an orchid, and there's a lot to do with root health. So I took this orchid out, and a lot of orchids come with this stuff called sphagnum moss in the inside. I actually have some of that. This is sphagnum moss, but this is a small chunk. So like often when orchids are sold, they sell the orchid wrapped around a big chunk of this. And the reason why this isn't great, I've learned, is because sphagnum moss holds a lot of moisture. And so what can happen, because orchids aren't supposed to receive a lot of water, if you think about living on the side of a tree, water's not going to be retained there. It can cause roots to rot. And that's exactly what happened with mine. So I've removed all of the sphagnum moss. And then basically I went to go check out the root system to see what is salvageable and what is not. What I found were a lot of roots that looked like this. So perhaps I should backtrack. The way that you know if a root should be kept or not is when you sit them in water, they turn a beautiful green color. So you can see this is the healthy root. These are all healthy roots here. Whereas underneath here, anything that is soft or can get pulled off when it's wet, that's considered a dead root. You can see all of that there. So there seems to be a bit of contention as to whether you keep these like long strandy little bits that sit inside or not. Some people just strip the sheath off and leave these roots. And if I had known that in advance, I probably would have tried that just in case any of these roots were viable, because if they're not viable, worst case, they just like break off in the soil and kind of decompose. But if they were good, they would have resheathed and like continued to live. But I cut them. So it'll be interesting to see if this little guy survives. And if you see Let's take, for example, this one here. So there is a test to know whether it's a healthy root or not. If it's like firm and like feels full of, I guess, water, then it's considered a healthy root. So you can see all of these are nice and plump and look happy. But this little guy here is brown and shriveled. And when you squeeze it, it actually is a bit mushy between your fingers. So that's how to know. And you'll also see that, like, for example, that one, some of the sheath comes off. So that's how to tell if it's not happy. But I think what I have decided is that even though all of this died because the sphagnum moss was keeping a bunch of moisture, we've still got a lot of other roots here. And so this might have a chance of recovering and flowering next year. This little guy, this root, I'm not sure if it will survive, but I've left it just in case, because you'll see that it's a little bit of a brown color. It's not dead, it feels like firm to touch. But I'm not sure if it's healthy or not. What I'm hoping is once it's planted into some fresh soil with nutrients again, maybe that will survive and be happy. So when you go to repot, what you need is to soak your little guy in water for at least an hour beforehand. You need your fresh pot. I'm trying to repot into this. You'll find a lot of orchids get potted into, whatever. This is fun. A lot of them come in like these little plastic tubs that have holes, but my problem was it got sold in a terracotta pot as well. So I would take my orchid out and I would water it in this and let it drain, because you're supposed to let the water drain for a long time. But I was placing it back into this pot that was holding all the water, and it wasn't letting air in to let the roots breathe and then dry out. And so that's how I've gotten root rot. So what I've decided instead is, rather than have a pot like this that doesn't allow air in, I've bought one that has lots of holes so that the roots can stay nice and aerated. And I'm not going to use one of those plastic sheaths. The next thing that you need is orchid soil. Orchid soil is a little confusing. I'm going to show you something that I bought that ended up not being good. So I went to Amazon trying to find some orchid potting mix, and originally I bought this. But this isn't a great orchid soil because I don't know if you can see, but it's super fine. It's almost like dust. And that's never going to hold in holes like this, right? That makes sense. Like, you know, if you're wanting something to aerate, something like this is going to hold so much water. It's not going to let it dry out. It's not going to let it get air. So this is terrible. I'm returning it. What you do need instead is a soil like this that has big chunks of bark along with food for the orchid. They say that you should not water the soil before you repot because it shocks the plant too much. It's too much water for it. Soaking the roots alone should be enough for them to kind of settle into a new pot. And then you can re-water it in a week or two. So, oh, I completely skipped a step. I am so brainless today. So this is what some of those like old smushy roots that I cut off look like. So if you see big, long, dead, saggy roots like this, cut them out. You don't need them. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to fill our pot to a level where we think that then the plant can sit on top of it. To place some of this big, it smells super woody. All right, so you can see it's not coming out the sides, right? Now we're going to place our orchid in, and we're just going to gently try and get these roots into the vase. It's a slightly different size and shape to my previous one, but it will learn to kind of like adapt to this. You just got to gently put it in so you don't damage the roots that you're trying to establish. And then will you fit that one? Doesn't matter if one or two stick up, they might just need to get long enough so you can then, I don't know if you can see that one's a little longer and it can't reach anywhere yet. It'll get long enough and find its way in over time. All right, and then what we're going to do is fill around it as much as we can, which can be hard when the bark bits are so big, but we are just going to gently place it through all of the holes. The smell reminds me of like playing in the playground as a kid when there was like bark everywhere and you'd roll around in it and you'd smell like bark. It's really cute. Apparently there is some kind of a test where you try to lift the plant and make sure that it doesn't come out, and that's how you know that you've like packed it in properly. I'm not gonna do that. That feels like a lot. I feel like this plant has been stressed enough as it is, and I'm just gonna pack it in as much as I can without being rough with the roots, and then just let it recover. Getting there. I do know that there are different soils for different orchid types, and I gotta be honest, I did not bother to check if this is the right one for this one. I think this plant is so stressed that I've just decided that I'm going to see how it copes, and if it does well, then amazing, and if it doesn't do well, I've made my peace that I might lose a baby. This looks pretty tight, like the plant's upright. I would have liked it to be a little more upright, but I'm worried that I'm gonna smush this root if I push too hard. So I think I'm happy with this. And then the roots are just covered. So like the roots are level with the top of the pot. And that is it. We're gonna put it aside in a bright but indirectly lit room, and I'm going to just give it a chance to heal. So now that we've trimmed the dead roots and we've trimmed the excessively long stem that I left, now it doesn't need as much energy to do its thing and recover and grow. And it's also in fresh soil that has been filled with special formula to act as fertilizer. So now we just give it a chance to recover. And then, yeah, hopefully I won't be able to post an update for a really long time, because it's gonna probably need this year to heal, and then maybe the next year it'll grow, and then I can give an update. That looks a lot more upright, hey. Ta-da! It's very anticlimactic, because I wanna know if I did a good job, but I don't know if I did a good job for yeah, kind of like children, I guess. We'll soon find out. Well, we won't actually. But anyway, bye guys.